Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about what sort of methods you can use in your ESL classroom, okay? And first I'd like to begin by talking about what methods are, okay? So where do methods come from? Methods come from your beliefs about what language learning is, and about how people learn, and about how teaching helps people learn. And the things that we need to take into consideration when devising a method are our aims for the course, what we're trying to teach, whether or not we want to employ certain types of techniques, what sort of activities and activity types we think are useful for the students, how to relate to the students, and ways of assessing the students and what they've learned. Okay, so let's get right into it and talk about what the methods are. Okay, so one very old method that is not really used too much anymore is called the grammar translation method. In this, you usually do not you do not speak in the target language. You speak in the student's native language, and there's generally not too much in terms of speaking and listening practice. You get readings, and then you usually translate those readings into your native language. This was used a lot in with Latin and Greek and languages like that. The next one that we're going to talk about is the audiolingual method, which in this one it involves a lot of repetition and drilling. So the teacher will just drill the students over and over again, and then they'll change certain words and certain parts of the drill. The next one is community language learning, where the learners speak in their first language, and then the teacher helps the students to translate what it is that they want to say, and then they learn the language that way. This is very difficult to employ because of the fact that you need a small group in order to make this work very well. The next one is the natural approach, and this was a de-emphasis of grammar and correction, and the output is not really forced upon the students. So the students aren't forced to speak, and they aren't forced to write, and it was in order to create a stress-free environment for them. And so there was huge amounts of input, reading and listening and stuff like that, and then they got very little work on the productive skills, on the idea that they would work on them when they were ready. The next one is called task-based learning, where the students are involved in meaningful tasks, and then they learn the language that way. So there's a lot of role play going on in the classroom. So some of these might include like interviews, seeing a doctor, or like calling customer support. There's a next one that I've actually never seen employed, but it's called the silent way. I've read about it several times, and the teacher uses silence and gesture to elicit responses from the students. Okay, and then pronunciation is highly emphasized in this method, and they use these Cuisenaire rods where they tap out like certain things and make these little structures and stuff like that, and then the student is able to figure out how things work in words that way. I don't exactly know how this method works, but anyways. The next one is called the person-centered approach, and in this one the students make the entire syllabus, and so the teacher comes with no ideas, and then the students talk about what they want to work on, and then the teacher makes the syllabus based upon what the students want. The next one is a lexical approach, where they break these lexical phrases into chunks, and very little grammar is studied, and the idea is that students learn by learning pieces of language rather than studying grammar. And then the next one is called dogme, and this one has, again, very few course books are thought not to be useful in this method, and the conversations between the students and the teacher is basically what the class consists of. Again, this is mostly useful for small groups. Okay, and then now let's talk about a couple that are used very commonly. Probably the most commonly used um, method these days, and what most course books are based upon, is called the Communicative Language Teaching, or CLT, or the Communicative Approach, CA. Um, the basic idea behind this approach is that we're trying to get the students involved in meaningful communication. And we'll talk about in other videos what that means exactly. And there's a strong approach, which is there's absolutely no teaching and only communication. And then there's a weak approach where, which employs a variety of methods. It has tons of exercises and all different kinds of things. It's basically, we'll talk more about this in other videos. The modern approach is basically using the weak version. And another one that is commonly used, you'll see it pretty often in with low-level students. It's something you can use with low-level students. Is called Total Physical Response, TPR. And this is where you shout out commands, and then the students follow your commands. So for instance, you go like stand up, and the students stand up. Sit down, and the students sit down. Walk to the door, and the students walk to the door. That kind of thing. And then after a while, you can get them to repeat. The guy who made this method claims that you can teach anything through this method, but I mean, I don't really think it's that useful except at low levels. So I mean, he was like, for instance, in some books that I've read, they said that you could go like, if I walk to the door, then you stand up or something, and then you walk over there, and then the students stand up, and if you don't, then they don't. But I think it's more useful at low levels. So that is basically the conclusion of this methodology video in ESL, and thank you for listening once again.